So this week we're going to begin a new little unit on image editing, and we're going to use an amazing website, www.pixlr.com, which is remarkably like Photoshop. Of course, it's not as full powered as Photoshop, but the basic simple Photoshop editing is available for no charge on the Pixlr website. So why would we look at image editing? What is the purpose of it apart from just fooling around? Well, first of all, business uses are extremely wide. Business uses for image editing are advertising, creating images for advertisements, for publishing books, magazines. Of course, the web is incredibly graphical, and for your own personal use, it can be very, very absorbing and satisfying. What kinds of things can we do? Well, first of all, you can take an image, you can rotate it, that is, you can spin it, you can crop it, or pull out just pieces of a picture. And of course, you can resize a picture, making it manageable size. A lot of times when you take photos with digital cameras, especially a good modern digital camera, the image is enormous. And in order to make it manageable, we have to crop it down to, resize it down to size. You can also airbrush out your wrinkles or your zits, depending on where you are on the curve of life. You can retouch so that if you take a photograph with some hair hanging down, then you could take that out. Red eye removal, of course. And the other thing that we can do with Pixlr, like we can with the full powered image editing, is combine elements of different images to create totally new images. And that takes using layers, which we'll look at next week. In this lesson this week, we're just going to open a picture, look at the elements of the window, look at some graphic file types, and then we'll also learn a couple of simple tools. So the Pixlr window, we're going to look for the menu bar, the navigator palette, the toolbox, the options bar, and the layers palette. So let's look at Pixlr. And here we are in the Pixlr window. Now, when I move my cursor, you'll see the curved arrow and the yellow that highlights where I'm pointing at. If I click the mouse, you'll see the red triangle. If I right-click the mouse, you'll see a blue triangle. Right-clicking on this website only gives us the Flash menus because it's a Flash-based website. So we have the menu bar up along the top, the toolbox right here, and the toolbox is reflected, the toolbox selections are reflected up in the options bar here. Here we have the navigator palette, the layers palette, and the history palette, and we'll be learning how to use those as we go along. File types. You're probably all very familiar with bitmap images, BMP, that's a widely used Windows image format. And then we have the graphics interchange format, or GIF. And then we have the JPEG file format, which is commonly used for photographs. And then Photoshop uses .psd, Pixlr uses .pxd. Pixlr can read Photoshop files. Photoshop cannot read Pixlr files. So if you open a Photoshop file and work on it in Pixlr, you will not be able to then reopen it in Photoshop, just in case you have Photoshop installed on your local machine, just so you know that. One of the main deciders between file types is the size of the file. As you can see here, we have a bitmap file at 20,454 bytes. The comparable JPEG file, only 4,440 bytes. PNG, which is a newer file type, it stands for Portable Networks Graphics. It supports transparency a little better than JPEG. It's somewhere in the middle at 13.5, and GIF is at 5,000. So you can see that the reason why JPEG is so popular for putting photographs on the web, the small file size means that websites load fast. I'm just going to come back to this file type. I just want to show you this link. This is at www.busharts.com, and they have a lovely graphics format training here. So if you're interested in graphics format, come here and read about it, and you will know more than I do about graphics formats, and that'll be wonderful for you. I just want to talk one in a little detail, and you can see I found this on the Bush Arts website, about vector images versus bitmap images. Pixlr, like most image editing programs, works with bitmap images. Bitmap images are like this house on the left. It's made out of individual pixels. Pixels being the little squares that make up our screen. The screen, while it looks smooth, is really just a checkerboard of little tiny squares called pixels. And when you resize a pixel-based image too big, it gets jaggies like the one, like this house you see here on this side. A vector image is really about shapes. A vector is really force and direction. And the vector image remembers that a black line goes from here to here at this angle, and the length of the line doesn't really matter. So therefore, as you scale vector images up, they stay smooth. But most of the images we'll work with will be pixel-based, so you have to be a little bit careful about just how far you zoom in or scale them up to keep them looking smooth. That's the dreaded jaggies. When you want to open an image into Pixlr, you can choose any of these file types: JPEG, GIF, PNG, BMP, PSD for Photoshop, or PXD, which are files you would have saved in Pixlr. You can also paste a URL into Pixlr to open an image from another website. And again, you can save as JPEG, BMP, PNG, or PXD. You cannot save as PSD, which is the Photoshop file type. If you choose JPEG, the system will prompt you for quality. If you are not an expert on image editing, just use 80. It's a safe bet, and it's the default too.